Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm gonna pick up kind of where we left off with yesterday's video. We looked at Down Street Station that was closed. It was a video from 10 years ago, and they were looking at the Winston Churchill areas of it, and they didn't really get into the bunkers. And I had seen videos before where they actually had got down there at least to where some of the computers, I think there were some bunks. Um, so I was looking after I finished the video and I found the video from Jago Hazard, and it is titled The Nuclear Bunkers on the London Underground. So I'm excited to check this one out. He always does a fantastic job, and I'm hoping that it touches on that. Even if it touches on something else, I'm interested. I don't know about you guys, but I will link his video in the description, along with links to Patreon, how you could support the channel here on YouTube, as well as my sports reacts page. But let's go ahead and check this out because I'm excited.
When I made my recent video on Westminster Underground Station, a few people in the comments section mentioned the old story about it secretly being a nuclear bunker, into which the government could flee in the event of war. As far as I'm aware, this story is not true, and I'll go into why I don't think the story adds up in a bit. But
This
it's
is
not
from
the
a year
only
ago.
story of nuclear bunkers on the tube, and I'd like to look into the various tales
Oh,
and how much
what I
truth there
saw.
is to them. So, firstly, let's break down the nuclear bunker at Westminster Station, not literally. I think this story comes from the
I don't think
brutalist
it was at
architecture for which the
Westminster.
station is famous. It's made of concrete, it looks like a bunker, at first glance at least. The stories like this will always attach themselves to any oppressive-looking concrete structure. I remember when I was at university, we were confidently told that one of the halls of residence was originally supposed to be a Swedish prison. Why Swedish? I don't know. Probably to make it harder to check on. But I have since met several people who assured me that while the story wasn't true on my campus, it definitely was on theirs, and that's where everybody else got the story from. I generally nod and give a non-committal, "Oh, how interesting." Westminster Station is not only made of concrete, but it's very deep. The Jubilee Line platforms here are second only to those at Waterloo for depth. However, aside from depth, it is not very blast-proof at all. The ground here, as in much of London, is not very stable. Westminster Station is basically a concrete box braced by crossbeams and with a roof held up by pilings, which in turn hold up Portcullis House. It's actually quite open plan, really. Certainly it's a lot more open plan than you want in the event of the bomb being dropped. Generally, the layout just isn't that of a nuclear bunker. Where would everyone sleep? Where
It's
would power
massive.
come from? Where are the stores? The urban legend goes on to state that the station continues for several stories further underground, which presumably accounts for the various bits you'd need to keep everyone alive. But then the question arises, how do you get everyone out if Portcullis House and the station collapses on top of them? Which they almost certainly would. The other reason it seems unlikely is because the government already has a bunker down there. It's codenamed Pindar, and it's 5 stories below the Ministry of Defence building in Whitehall. It opened in 1992, 7 years before the deep section of Westminster Underground Station, and it's connected directly to Downing Street and the Cabinet Office. As a matter of fact, this was one of the things the architects behind the tube station had to watch out for when they were building it, as well as numerous Second World War era tunnels. So I think we can safely say that this bunker has been debunked. Now, I understand that the
just
current
not
fashion among
there.
YouTubers when they make a terrible joke is to cut to a shot of themselves cracking up to indicate self-awareness. Those YouTubers are cowards. I stand by my terrible joke. Anyway, Westminster probably isn't a bunker. Are there any others on the tube? The Underground, of course, has a long history of providing shelter from
Wow,
attack.
look at
During the
that.
First and Second World Wars, people sheltered on the tube. There were several abandoned stations that found new purposes. Down Street housed the Railway Executive Committee, and famously, at the height of the Blitz, Winston Churchill made his temporary HQ down here. Brompton Road became the
Oh,
home of the
okay.
Royal Artillery's anti-aircraft division, and the tunnel to Aldwych was used to house treasures from London's museums and art galleries. Aldwych was not abandoned at the time, but frankly I think the London Underground wished it was. Also during the Second World War, these deep-level air raid shelters were built. These were ultimately intended to be stations, connected together to form an express tube line that would be completed after the war. That line never was completed, of course, but the deep-level shelters were much appreciated by local residents when they were finally opened to the public in 1944. They remain to this day, having served various purposes over the years. The London Transport Museum even gives tours of the one at Clapham South. But of course they were never built with nuclear weapons in mind. Another deep-level shelter was built here at Chancery Lane. This was, again, to form part of an express tube line.
That's the one. This is the one that I saw the guys that scaled the building and then scaled down to these and slid in and then let the other guys in here. This is the one that the urban explorers got into.
That would have complemented the Central Line. It would basically have been an early equivalent of the Elizabeth Line. It was never used as an air raid shelter, but instead became a government communications centre. It was handed over
That's
to the
why there
post
was
office in
computers.
1949, who in
Oh.
those days were also in charge of telephones. It became known as the Kingsway Telephone Exchange, or the Kingsway Trunk Switching Centre. It served various purposes, but
Oh.
in the event of the Cold War turning hot, it was to serve as part of a communications network connecting London with Manchester and Birmingham. It had a store of rations and an artesian well, and even a subterranean bar. I think if I was stuck below the radioactive rubble of London, I'd want a drink too. So here you go, an actual bona fide nuclear bunker attached to a tube station. Unfortunately for any doomsday preppers living in Holborn, the site was decommissioned in the 80s and 90s after it was decided to move such facilities away from the city centre. Actually, the site was for sale for many years, but it turns out, surprisingly, that there's not a whole lot you can do with an underground citadel. It was finally sold last year, and apparently the company that bought it wants to open the tunnels to the public. I don't know about you, but I'd love to have a nose around down there.
Yes.
Not far away was British Museum Station, which is unrecognisable from street level, but it was here. It was on what's now the Central Line and lasted from 1900 to 1933, when it was replaced by additional platforms at Holborn. Then the army moved in. It was used for administrative purposes by the Scots Guards and other household regiments.
Gosh, that would be cool to be able to buy that. And could you imagine setting up your home somehow in those tunnels? That would be super
The
cool.
theory was that in the event of a major flooding disaster, the army would take charge from here. Some contemporary sources, such as Duncan Campbell's book War Plan UK, speculate that they might have served other
That building.
purposes should the worst happen. While we're on the subject of flooding, I can't talk about Cold War defences without also mentioning the network of floodgates built into the tube tunnels. The Underground is engaged in a never-ending battle against the watery ground of London. 30 million litres need to be pumped out every day. This is not accounting
Wow.
for the additional dangers posed by underground rivers, water mains, sewers, and the Thames itself. In 1939, in preparation for war, floodgates were installed in the tunnels at Embankment, Charing Cross, Waterloo, London Bridge, Bank, Wapping, Bethnal Green, South Kensington, and London Road. London Road being the Bakerloo Line depot, if you're wondering what that is. In the 1950s, they were installed at Russell Square, Green Park, Kennington, Liverpool Street, Tottenham Court Road, and Moorgate. In 1968, another set of gates were built on the new Victoria Line at Green Park. The theory was not that these would protect central London from flooding, but that they would prevent flooding in central London from getting out to the suburbs, where presumably the tunnels could theoretically be used for shelter. The gates could be controlled individually, or they could all be controlled from here. This nondescript building is the site of the incomplete station at North End, which was to form part of the Charing Cross, Euston and Hampstead Railways line to Golders Green, now part of the Northern
Wow.
Line. The station was never finished, and I'm planning a video looking into that in more detail in the not-too-distant future. But it was strengthened against atomic blast, which seemingly proves that the floodgate network was to be part of the city's defence against nuclear attack. Certainly the details were classified during the Cold War. There is a popular urban legend that Buckingham Palace has its own secret tube station by which the royal family could be whisked away to safety. This is not true, although the Victoria line does pass very close by. There's also the story that the Post Office Railway would perform a similar function, but during the Cold War this couldn't actually carry passengers. It can now, though, so do pay them a visit if you want the experience of
Yeah,
riding a
we did a
spooky,
video on that.
semi-abandoned
It was
tube line.
cool.
The subject of Cold War defence preparations is a fascinating one, and what I've mentioned in this video is just a fraction of what's down there, much of which remains classified. However, it seems likely that in the event of the balloon going up and war being declared, the real priority would be to get everyone official as far from London as quickly as possible. Many substantial bunkers were built outside of the big cities, where attacks would be less likely. In short, in the event of an atomic attack on London, your best course of action would be not to head underground, but to head as far away from London as you possibly can. Which may not be helpful advice under the circumstances.
Right.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this radioactive tale from the tube. If so, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more.
That was a great video, as always. So that actually answered a lot of the questions that I had. So I'm really glad that I came across this video from Jago. I really liked that. I hope you guys did as well. Let me know, because I know a lot of you guys that have commented have worked for the underground in some capacity or did like construction down there or anything. Let me know if you've had the opportunity to see any of those areas that people don't generally go, where even though that those old computers and all that setup, the communications setup is, or any other areas. I think it's all interesting. But I enjoyed that a lot. I hope you guys did as well. If you did, hit like, hit subscribe, share. Have an awesome day. Thanks for watching with me, guys.